And YouTube should go live. All right, well, if they're listening on YouTube, then yep, there we go. Right, we're on.
We're on. Hello, everybody. Out in Discord World.
My Discord is just installing
Disco
some
World.
updates.
Discord World. Did I?
Thank you.
Is it live on YouTube yet?
Should be.
Darren, we can see me. Yeah, I'm changed. Yep. I've changed to a new webcam just to try and work out what the hell's going on. So you can probably see me all right until 5 minutes in, if the last few have anything to go by. 2 frames a second, though. Well, that's 1 frame more than you need.
We should do a slideshow.
Oh, squeaky feet. Sound and video on Riverside is a second or so out of sync. That's not all that big a deal.
You're not supposed to be watching on Riverside anyway. You're supposed to be watching on YouTube.
Yeah, get out of here. 16 people are watching on Riverside by the looks of things.
Really?
What can you do? No, it probably is quicker, to be honest. I think I've got YouTube set to ultra low latency, but I think that still translates to several seconds. So if you want to get your comments in on Discord while there's, before we've moved on to the next story, then yeah, probably YouTube isn't ideal. Sorry.
There's a lot of YouTube hate coming in on the Discord. Probably shouldn't say that live on YouTube.
I've just noticed that the YouTube channel has a little badge in the corner, which is the logo as it was in 2014. I think it's 10 years out of date now. The old rectangular one before we went square.
We did just change it, didn't we?
10 years ago.
I meant changed it just since that 2014.
There have been 4 versions of the PC Pro logo.
Oh, I knew you were going to know that.
I can picture 3 very easily.
To be fair, one of them is almost the same as another one. But,
did we just add a shadow to the...
No, that's the one that changed during my editorship when James Ty basically kicked off about the whole idea of changing the logo. So we moved it about 6 pixels to the left, and that was about it.
The change one is where the Alpha logo comes in.
Huh? What logo of the magazine?
The Alpha branding. I've got a graphic of this. I haven't got it to hand.
But we never changed the magazine logo.
No,
Alpha
might have been online.
Purely online.
Yes, purely for the podcast.
Oh yes, the podcast logo has changed quite a few times.
No, we're talking about the actual mag.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. I'll shut up and go back to what I'm doing. My apologies. I'm very sorry to confuse.
Oh, what's this message just coming in?
There's a mag, says Ian Ruston. Yes. It's amazingly how few people know about it these days.
We don't really talk about it very much. I mean,
we will
today.
later.
We
will later.
Oh, considering the amount of effort.
I don't know if any of you read the final post from I can never say it. Anand Tech. Yeah.
I didn't know. Did he say go and read PC Pro?
No, but basically he said, just go and read independent sources. Don't go for content farms. Is how I sort of interpret it.
Says
I don't know
future
if that's
publication.
Well, we are very independent, though. I mean, we get zero editorial oversight whether we want it or not.
This hasn't been recorded anywhere, has it?
No. 1 p.m.
No one's listening.
Shut up, Nelly. Why am I picking that up? Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is Thursday the 5th of September and I'm Barry Collins, features editor of the magazine thing we've just been discussing offline. And if you want to join these fun little 5-minute discussions before we actually go live, you can join us every week on Discord at pcpro.link/Discord. And it's all the red button content there that you could possibly want. With me today, I've got Darren Graham-Smith.
Good afternoon.
And Lee Grant.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And where are we starting this week? I've lost my schedule. We are starting at IFA, in fact, which oddly both Tim and John are at, but can't join us live. So you have to put up with us second-hand in it. And Darren, Intel have been launching some stuff.
They have. I mean, obviously, Intel have been launching stuff more than annually for as long as PC Pro's been around. But this time around, it is quite interesting because the new Core Ultra 200V series of processors, terrible name if you ask me, but those have been officially unveiled at IFA, and it's quite a big deal. It's one of the most significant launches for a long time. So this is the first set of Intel chips to use TSMC's 3nm process. They're all mobile processors that have been announced just now. There's 9 of them, which are all variations on a theme. But Intel is claiming that with new designs and new architectural improvements, there's a 30% gain over the previous generation, which was only like a year ago, obviously. So that's amazing. That's in terms of power/performance, whatever that means. But I think that they're leaning quite a bit on the power side of the equation. They've claimed that there's a 50% reduction in power consumption per watt. I was about to say that's not right. In power consumption per unit of compute, or however you want to slice it. Saying they can get more than 20 hours of battery life out of a regular laptop now, based on a new Lunar Lake processor. The new chips, they all come with 8 megabytes of side cache. I don't quite know what that is compared to L1, L2, L3, etc., but it's all new, so it's additional to whatever they had before. What I can understand, what I do know, is that they all come with discrete NPUs, every one of which is rated at a minimum of 40 tops. How convenient. That means they'll all qualify as Microsoft Copilot Plus PCs. One of the most interesting things is that for the first time, I think, ever in Intel's history, these new processors have on-package memory, just like Apple's M series. There's a selection of them, and also you'll be very pleased to hear the bottom end ones all support 16 gigabytes. There is no 8 gigabyte version of this. The entry level is, if John Honeyball were here, he might complain that the high end version is 32 gig. You can't go above that, but still, for the thin and light, low power format that they're targeting, that's pretty good. And they also come with all the other mod cons you might really want. The chipset supports 2 10 gigabit USB 3 ports and Thunderbolt 4 on top of that, and they come with Wi-Fi 7 plumbed in as well. And although these aren't exactly bargain processors, we've already had some leaks and some announcements indicating that the first Lunar Lake powered Copilot Plus PCs could be pretty affordable. We've seen some leaked SKUs at €999 and official announcements from the likes of Acer and I haven't got it in front of me. That sort of laptop makers. Dell, thank
Samsung.
you. All right.
Just helping you out, my friend.
Thank you. Starting at $11.99. So really, I mean, if you're interested in all the advantages that previously I think you've had to have a MacBook for, but you want to stick with Windows, this is a really quite competitive looking package.
Yeah. Well, why don't we go on and talk about those laptops that Darren was failing to mention a moment ago, Lee?
Yeah, I mean, particularly if we're looking at, as Darian looked at, the battery life, because Intel is really puffing out its chest about its battery life. As Darian said, they're claiming 20 hours on this Core Ultra, the Core Ultra 7268V. And sorry, if Intel is listening to this, just as a retailer who has to sell your tat to the public, please come up with a better way of creating product names and throwing Scrabble letters onto the floor, because you've never been good at this, but this is just making it worse. So anyway, 20 hours of battery life. I'm just going to put something into Discord because they put out an interesting grab, and I don't know if I've completely misread this. So they said 24 hours of battery life on this Office Productivity Suite, and then they said you could get, it suffers a horrific fall from grace for Microsoft Teams, where you get 10 hours before the battery dies. So this graphic that they've posted up, it's entitled Battery Life Mythbuster. It compares the battery life between this Core Ultra and the Qualcomm X1E-80-11. And the Intel is listed with a team call time of 10.7 hours and the Qualcomm with 12.7 hours, which to me seems more. 12 seems more than 10, but apparently it's less. So anyway, I'll let the Discord guys work the way through that, because if I've missed something, please let me know. So, my conclusion at this point seems to be that Intel chip can pass a benchmark better than the Qualcomm, but the real life scenario, it could be possibly worse. And if you're wondering, the Qualcomm XE8-0- whatever it is actually the Snapdragon Elite X, but clearly Intel is scared to put it on the slide because not only it's a better performer, it's a better name. So where is the magic? Intel claims it's reduced the memory latency by 40%, but as Darian said, the memory on this stuff is on board, so it's going to be quicker. So that's going to account for a chunk of that. Intel have also said they can push stuff between their cores in a way that they couldn't do before. They're also just kicking the boot in with Qualcomm by saying that their latency is now less than Qualcomm's latency. But I had a quick look at the data of the demo machines for the battery life stuff, and it does appear that Intel appears to have slightly disadvantaged itself by running a machine with 32 gig instead of 16 gig. So you'd expect the Intel figures to be slightly down because they are running a dribble more voltage. But, Intel do say they're running the Arc GPUs with pre-production drivers. Now, I couldn't possibly say that the drivers could be manipulated so that the graphics card pumps out a black screen to lower power usage. I would never suggest that. But I personally, with all these sorts of things, and the thousands of laptops that I get my hands on a year, I've genuinely seen 10-hour battery life. I can count it on one hand. So I'm going to wait for Mr. Danton to get his mitts on these and sort of see what he thinks. But it all looks like it's all going in the right direction. But it's the aggressive stance at the moment between Intel, AMD, just kicking Qualcomm so hard because obviously this Copilot Plus launch that Microsoft did earlier in the year with Qualcomm, it's really put AMD's nose out of joint and Intel's nose out of joint. So any chance they can get to sort of lever the boot in, it's one of the most aggressive pitches I've seen for some time.
Intel also, they've been focusing on compatibility. Now, it's got to be said, we've all been very impressed by how, the first real, true, fully supported and embraced ARM Windows laptops, the Copilot Plus ones, not, little experimental weird things, but something Microsoft's really thrown its weight behind. They work really well, but Intel has put its finger on their kind of Achilles heel, if you'll pardon the mixed metaphor, which is games. Obviously, gaming drivers, gaming hardware is an area where the ARM platform doesn't have the software support, and B doesn't have, as was pointed out by Retro Al on Discord, it doesn't have the power of Intel's high-end Arc GPUs. So that is another area where that's a reason why you might want to stick with Intel if you want to play games or indeed do the sort of video processing that leans on the GPU. Versus whatever the real world advantages of ARM's battery life turn out to be.
Yeah, I think the other point we need to make here is that when they talk about all day battery life or 24-hour battery life, we're talking about 24 hours with a thing basically just sitting on but doing almost nothing else. And even I sit here with a MacBook, and there's sort of phenomenal claims made about the MacBook Pro's battery life lasting 18, 21 hours if you read reviews. But once you push them doing anything half serious, then that quickly dwindles into 5-6 hours if you're lucky. So always with these figures, take it with a real pinch of salt. It's 24 hours at the best possible conditions, and the PC Pros, Darian, stop breathing for crying out loud. But PC Pro's own tests are with light use battery, where it's almost just running, doing little else, and then we push it with office tasks and stuff. So they give you a more realistic view. And on layers, I've not yet seen anything where it's. Actually, to go to Discord, sorry, Darren, and we'll come back to you in a sec. But Ian Clark said, "I think battery life is a proxy for being economical, and electricity is a nice thing, but in itself, once you go beyond many hours, does it matter that much?" And then Jeff Campbell replied, "Well, as with phones, the benchmark is being able to take a laptop away for a weekend break for occasional use without needing to worry about chargers and the like." And I sort of agree, But for me, it's been able to work on it as if I'd work on it plugged in if I'm out and about. And even now I've not seen a laptop that is able to fully function all day doing work such as working InDesign or Photoshop or any high powered application or playing a couple of games and still be able to get through the entire day. Darren.
All I was going to say was I get phenomenal battery life out of my MacBook Air because I use Word, and I do suspect that the few people who insist on using Google Docs require me to have Chrome open, and that's where it all falls down.
Yeah, it's very true. Once the OS gets hold of it, I've noticed with many of my customers with Windows 11 machines that they bought a new laptop and sort of they come back and say the battery's not very good on this, and Windows is having a very good stab at managing the battery in some way which means something to it but doesn't mean a lot to the battery, and is absolutely caning. And you sort of try and tame it, and then an update goes and it all goes out the window again. So I think the proof of the pudding is when Windows on ARM finally does get out the starting gates in any meaningful way, and maybe we will start to see the greatness that gives Darian a bit more oomph in his MacBook start to come over to Windows.
So just before we leave Aoife, there was one announcement that caught my eye yesterday, which is Acer's Project Dual Play. And this is a concept laptop. This hasn't actually been announced as a sellable product, but it's interesting nonetheless. So Acer basically built a gaming laptop where you can pull the trackpad out, pop a couple of controllers on the side, and turn that into a sort of physical controller, a bit like an Xbox controller that you can play the game with. And simultaneously, as you pull this trackpad out to turn it into a gamepad, two speakers pop out of the sides to improve the audio you're getting from your games. As I say, they've not announced this as a product, although to be fair, they are pretty. There's a lot of detail about how this thing. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think this is complete vaporware. I think they're more than likely dipping their toe in the market and seeing how well this gets received. But this idea of a sort of detachable controller for your gaming laptop, what do you think, Lee?
No. Just no. This is like someone's crossed a Volvo with a ferret so you can have a car you can shove down your trousers. No one is asking for this at all. All right, as a concept or some AI-generated art, it's not bad, but I have a bit of a problem with gaming laptops anyway, and always do my best to dissuade people from buying them. But this is... No, there's just too many bits to break. It's... why would you want... how much would that cost? How many compromises would you make just to be able to deliver that as a workable package? I mean, the breakages must be horrific. Everyone, we've just been talking about battery life and Jeff Campbell wanting to avoid taking his his charger on holiday with him. Now you've got to take your controllers to go onto your trackpad as well. No.
Darren, you any more interested?
I don't know. I mean, initially I thought, silly gimmick, but I bought an Xbox so I could sit back with nice ergonomic controllers and play on a big screen. And admittedly, the screen on my laptop isn't quite the size of the TV in the living room. But, the difference in the user experience between having something that fits your hands where everything's nicely, reachable and, your classic WASD kind of controls, to me, that's a big deal. So, if I played a few more games, I might be tempted, but I just don't have the time.
I personally think it's a bit of a shame they've not made it into more of like a Steam Deck thing, because they're really popular at the moment. And if you could pull that out and then use it as a portable, gaming system in itself, rather than just a controller, I think it would have more appeal. But where I am, if you want me to come and be your project manager, Acer. In the meantime, we're moving on. And talking of moving on, USB-A looks like it's moving on, Lee.
Yeah, no, if you listened a couple of weeks ago, you'll have heard Barry mention a rumour that the next Mac Mini is going on a bit of a diet and will be much smaller than the current and indeed previous versions, which have been pretty much the same for pretty much over a decade. So this week, adding fuel to the rumour pyre is that USB even, is leaving, which isn't a huge surprise, I guess, as Mac has already sort of done this with other machines. The strong rumours that this new Mac Mini will have 5 USB-C ports, which is rather nice. I presume one of them will be used for power, though, so you might be down to 4. by the time you finish with that. But what I was particularly excited about, because I'm a Mac Mini user myself, is that 2 of these ports are apparently going to be on the front for the first time, because that's one of the most annoying things about the Mac Mini is yes, it might look very sleek and very nice, but trying to just quickly shove anything in it is, leaning over the desk or trailing cables, it's a bit of a mess. So it sounds potentially like this is a bit of a winner. And of course, if these are all rumors, Apple hasn't confirmed any of this nonsense yet. So if they are really reducing the size of the Mac Mini, and given what they can do with the ARM chip and its cooling and stuff like that, you'd have to say there's a lot of wasted space in that current Mac Mini chassis. Then shoveling out the USB-A ports is a sensible move, and possibly a necessary move, to be able to squeeze as much into it as they need to.
Were you lamenting the loss of USB-A, Darian?
No, it should have gone long, long ago. There is no reason for it to still exist except the drag of 10 billion devices and cables that use it. I'm not delighted about only having 5 USB ports in total on the new Mac Mini, though, if that's true. The M2 Mac Mini has 6 USB ports in total, of which 4 are Thunderbolt capable. So we're losing something there. And for a desktop machine, I know it's I know part of the sell is that it's compact, but I don't really think people are moving their, sticking their Mac Mini in a briefcase and taking it to work or whatever. I think it is, a thing that stays in place. And so I think I've got more than 5 things that I want to plug into it and keep plugged in for convenience, So I'm still not going to be able to get away from the untidiness of a USB dock. And obviously this is, an absolute first world problem. Oh, woe is me. I've got to plug in a £10 little thing that also has, I've got one at the moment, and it has the also convenient advantage that it makes it much easier to access USB ports from the front, because as Lee says, the current Mac Mini is a completely blank facade at the front. I'm going to buy the thing anyway. There's no doubt about it. So it's kind of academic. As long as there's one USB socket, just the smallness and the loveliness and the M4 performance and all of that, I think 5 USB ports is enough that you can't really, you're not going to be able to talk anyone out of buying one who wants one.
It's interesting you say about the USB-A dying. It's a conversation I had recently with I will call them a major retailer. And I was sort of just chewing the fat really about why USB-C sort of seems to have died in adoption in certain spheres. I'm talking sort of USB Wi-Fi adapters, or if you buy a wireless mouse, it will still be USB-A on it. And one of the issues, it seems to be, is the structural rigidity of USB-A compared to USB-C. USB-C is really easy to break. We always think USB-C is quite easy to break, but the amount of USB-C ports I personally see that have been smashed, or just power ports, because they're so much smaller, physically smaller. USB-A is just a lot more robust. So my fear of I love USB-C. It's a wonderful thing, but it's USB-A is definitely a tougher prospect.
There's also a lot of confusion over USB Type-C, which is entirely the fault of the implementers and the standards bodies and so on. I think we've talked about it in the past. You can see a cable and go, okay, that's a USB cable, but you don't know what speed it's capable of, and you don't know what power rating it has. And there's no solution to that on the horizon that I can see either. So it's understandable that people, knowing that not all cables are created equal, are just a little bit dubious of the whole thing. Whereas USB-A, for better or worse, has the reputation of what what you're going to get.
Yeah. Sorry, Ben.
I was going to say, genuinely, one of the best tech purchases I've made in the last year is these little USB-C to USB-A adapters, which I have 2 of them. I think they were about 10 quid off Amazon, and they have saved my bacon countless times over the past couple of years. Darian's got a few as well.
Got a drawer full of them.
Do you think we should cover mount one to the next edition of PC Pro? And I tell you, it would be the best-selling issue we've ever had, because the amount of times I use those is unreal. Sorry,
I can see the cover line now. Use any peripheral.
Any port in a storm.
Oh, very good.
You've been saving that for a while, haven't you?
There's no off on the Genius switch, mate. That was straight off the top of my head.
Well, Genius, I'm sure the Apple Genius will be happy to sell you some adapters for a great price. But Darian's absolutely right about USB-C. And a comment I often make, because when I sell a laptop and I'm talking, people say, how many USB ports? And I point to the USB-C, and people invariably say, well, what's that? They've no idea. And I have to make the point is, well, it's this is what it is, but actually what's on the inside, what it does, frankly, is anyone's game from this perspective. And that was encapsulated perfectly about a year ago when a customer came roaring back in with their USB-C stick and their laptop, moaning that I'd sold them one with a Duff socket because they were trying to plug it into the Kensington port. So, it is a very confusing thing.
Okay. Well, we're sort of sticking with USB-C or USB-A and things you plug into USB ports anyway with the next story, Darian.
Oh yeah, this is the YubiKey, which has been discussed by Davey Winder. I think John Honeyball probably has a box of them somewhere. The YubiKey is a physical hardware token which allows you to authenticate your identity to a supporting computer system using the FIDO, is it protocol? Let's call it a protocol. And basically, it's generally been accepted for many, many years that it's a good thing because it makes it extremely hard for anybody to fake your login, because they would need to somehow get hold of this actual physical key that you might keep on your keyring and plug it into a USB port. There's your link to prove, or at least to vouch that they are the person that is attempting to log in. Unfortunately, it has just come to light. Some clever security researchers have discovered it is possible to clone a YubiKey. It is possible to get access to the normally heavily encrypted and very hard to duplicate magic numbers inside it, and thereby perhaps to gain access to some very heavily protected resource that would normally require a YubiKey. I'm kind of over-explaining this perhaps, but the thing is, this is, the headline sends everyone into a little bit of a tizzy. I think the idea that FIDO and YubiKeys together have been not exactly the gold standard, let's say, but definitely, at least bronze of proper enterprise level, state secret level authentication. So the idea that it's not secure is very troubling, especially because the YubiKey is, I think, by design to keep it secure, not in any way firmware accessible or upgradable. So if you've been using one and a vulnerability has now been discovered, there's nothing you can do except stop using it, bin it, buy a new one, whatever. But should we be worried, was the rubric that Barry put on the running order for today's podcast. And I think the answer is not. Don't panic, because in order to get at the contents of your YubiKey, well, first of all, very simply, someone needs to physically get their hands on it. And that immediately rules out approximately 99.999% of the people in the world, because how the hell are they going to, they're going to find you and get their mitts on your stuff? Hackers in Russia or Brazil just ain't going to have a chance. Even if they do manage to get hold of it, it is not as simple as plugging it into a laptop and typing, copy secret codes from drive D to drive B or whatever. You need to actually crack the thing open, and now, as I understand it, I haven't tried this myself, you need to hook it up to an oscilloscope and measure the flux of the electromagnetic, capacitors. Basically, you need to use very, very specialist laboratory equipment to connect the correct bit, which is an Infineon microcontroller, and observe the way it fluctuates when you do certain things. And from this, because it is not coded in a way which is quite secure enough to apply or to conceal pseudo randomness, it is possible with the correct advanced information to infer what is called a cryptographic secret, from which you could in theory reconstruct an authentication code that you could then code onto your own USB key, that you could then use to verify your own identity as being that of the stolen YubiKey, until and unless the person notices their YubiKey's been nicked and deauthorizes it. So it's pretty heavily theoretical, really. But still, it's like a lot of these, modern day security risks that we come across. I mean, one's kind of impressed that someone managed to find it was possible. And if it's not an active risk, it's certainly a reminder that even the things that seem safest, that seem absolutely watertight, usually are not.
Yeah, I did try the UB keys a while ago, and I just didn't get on with them. I had one with the NFC dongle thing on it, so you could use it on your phone as well. But I found that NFC thing really clunky, and I just found the whole. I mean, I see John Honeyball lurking in the cheap seats on Discord says that he has 4 of them set up, and he uses them. He uses it to 2-factor authenticate Bitwarden when he's joining a new computer. So I guess if you're only using it rarely in that occasion where you're adding, say, your password manager to a new device, the inconvenience is okay. But then you've still got to remember to have it around. Maybe it just sits on your keyring. I don't know. I never get on with it. Have you? Do you two use them?
Nah, not me. I don't have. I always say I don't have any sensitive secrets worth protecting with a device costing more than about 6p.
This is true. If you want to know anything, just ask me. I'll tell you. It's not a problem. I've listened to John talk about them, and I can understand why John uses them. But my use case, I've never quite got across the line for wanting to buy one. But I think the interesting element of this story is the issue seems to be with a microcontroller that YubiKey.
Well, that's the
uses.
company. YubiKey is the company.
Is it? That'll be why I mistyped it then. There we go. I was right. See, I can't even trust myself. So this microcontroller is not only on their devices, it's on a lot of other devices. So the slight concern, I guess, going forward is they've done the work on this and seem to have a very good idea that they can do it on this, again, with an army of scientists and a portable laboratory and possibly a finger if you need to authenticate the device to start the process. But how many other controllers are out there where maybe their firm isn't quite on the rails? It's still going to be a heck of a job to pull this off. But as Darian said, it just absolutely blows my brain that someone actually thought to be able to do this. And it's the head, but it's always the brand damaging aspect of the headline, isn't it? Because this is not the sort of thing that Yubico needs to be out there, because if they get a reputation that they can be hacked, that's all anyone will remember. But I guess if they start offering 50% discount codes on replacement keys, then user apathy will probably prevail and this all will blow over quite quickly.
Yeah, listening to Lee has actually encouraged me to finesse my own opinion. It's introduced me to a new way of looking at this, which is basically, of course, we understand why John uses them. Anyone would if they are responsible for client data. It's not necessarily that you might be worried about your own security. It's that you need to show a third party that you've taken all necessary responsible steps. So even though this attack is highly theoretical, I do imagine there are plenty of IT managers and security officers and so on today going, although we do not believe for 1 second that our customer data is at risk, we have to fix this now so we can show that we are doing best practice.
Yeah, but I mean, as Wondercall says on Discord, that I think you two are half joking, but you've got nothing of value. But you have your email accounts and whatever. If that were hacked, you'd be in trouble. I do think we do take a sort of blasé, not PC Pro, I should say, but people in general take a sort of blasé attitude to their personal security sometimes. But I think that's partly because that's so hard. It is still far, far too hard to secure a PC to any degree, and I'm not just PCs, online accounts. Everybody still uses the same insecure password on every single account. What my kids do absolutely terrifies me, despite the amount of times I try and introduce them to password managers and stuff like that. They use it for 2 minutes, then go back to the way they were doing it previously, and it's too hard. It needs to be much more simple. Apple are doing a decent job on this, actually, to be fair. With in fact, I was setting up a MacBook Air for my daughter the other day, and when she was creating passwords, it was just asking her for a fingerprint, and then it would create a random password in Keychain, is it the password manager called? Yeah. So that's an improvement, because again, she doesn't know the password, she just knows her fingerprint, and that's better. But we need to get more like that. That needs to be common across the board.
Well, this is passkeys, isn't it? That's supposed to fix
Yeah,
this
effectively, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it's a very long way from being ubiquitous or even being widely understood, to be honest.
And I think a lot of the confusion for that is because there's so many different systems in play. I believe the next issue of PC Pro, so not the one that we're about to talk about later, but the one after, I write about one of the UK's current leading ISPs attempts to implement 2FA on its email accounts. And they've had a right to reply on that because they've made such a horlicks of it. So it does cause problems. Saying this week, my daughter has started a new school, and it's a high school, so they all have, apparently kids now have email addresses. And what's the first thing they were told to do was to open their Jotter and write down their email password on the inside of their book cover.
Yeah.
And it's like, well done, good work there.
My daughter's it's not the school she's at anymore, but when she first got her email account there, they sent the email address and password in the same email out to them, and then you couldn't change the password. So superb work. And this is kids' email. Anyway,
Absolutely.
let's move along, and we are talking. It's me, in fact, and this is Microsoft. He says, rapidly scanning down a schedule he himself created. Microsoft are about to announce a revamp of Copilot. Hooray, says the crowd. So this is coming in about a fortnight's time on September 16th, according to Tom Warren on The Verge, who is very well tapped into all things Microsoft. And it seems like this is going to be in two parts. The first bit is we're going to get another blinking rebranding of Copilot. So whereas currently, for example, you might have Copilot in Word, that is about to become Microsoft 365 Copilot in Word, because the Microsoft branding department doesn't sleep easy until they've got 4 more words in a brand than is necessary. So the whole lot is about to be rebranded once more. But what perhaps is the more interesting aspect is they're going to revamp the feature set. And in particular, it seems they're looking to revamp the business aspect of this. So I didn't realise this, and it's partly why I wanted to cover this story. But they've basically got 2 strands of Copilot now. Microsoft 365 Copilot, where it's basically the business tier, which is priced at £30 per user per month, where it gets built into all of your 365 Office apps, and you can use it on your own data. And then there's Copilot Pro, which is the consumer offering, which is...
Pro is the consumer offering.
I know. And that's £20 a month. And that also allows you to use AI features in Word, Excel, all of the regular Office apps, both online and the desktop apps, and seemingly for Mac as well. Now, when I tried to start using this some months ago, when they first launched this, it wasn't working on the Mac apps, and I quickly got a refund. So I might have to go back and give this another go at some point. But they're planning to... it seems, reading between the lines of what Tom Warren writes on The Verge, that maybe they've not got quite as many customers on either Copilot Pro or Microsoft 365 Copilot that they'd like, and so there's a host of new features coming for these. It has to be said that they've actually started to remove some features from Copilot Pro. So if you're a ChatGPT subscriber, you get a feature called GPTs. In fact, you get that for free now, where you can create your own chatbots dedicated to specific tasks. And Microsoft basically just copied this themselves and called it GPT Builder and launched that, I think, around March time. And then they quietly removed it in June. So I don't know what's going on there, why they did that, what the motivation was. But there's not a great amount of detail about what they're going to announce with these products. And part of me wonders again whether this is this sort of they're calling it Microsoft 365 Copilot Wave 2 in the invites that they're sending out. So I think, well, one, we're clearly going to see a new set of AI features, and maybe this will coincide with the next version of GPT, which has long been expected, GPT-5. We don't know, but I think this also kills off any speculation that we're going to get Windows 12 this year, because there's been a lot of speculation that Microsoft was sort of holding back some AI tools so that it could create differentiation for Windows 12, and that, well, those announcements tend to come sort of March time normally, but they did, I think, announce Windows 11 in the autumn and suddenly banged it out, and there was some suspicion that Windows 12 might make it, but I think this almost certainly kills that dead unless they're gonna spring a late surprise. What's your thoughts, gentlemen?
I mean, it's, in a way, I kind of like seeing Microsoft kind of experimenting and learning and growing and trying things out in public. It's refreshing compared to the way some companies, and Microsoft itself in the past, has been very kind of inscrutable and slow moving and not listening to users or the market until it was way too late. It's nice that they are rushing to do the best they can and to, you know, to throw stuff at the wall, kind of. But yeah, they're just, the branding and the way it's being communicated is an absolute disaster. I mean, I thought that the word Copilot itself, I thought was very clever, actually. I thought that was the perfect term for what you wanted an AI to be and to do. But yeah, they've completely fragmented the idea of it into a sort of PC and also a set of functions in Word and Excel and so forth, and also a set of functions inside your computer, to the point where the word is just meaningless. And as we were saying with USB Type-C, it just makes me want to stay away from the whole thing, because I don't have confidence in what I'm going to be potentially paying for, what the features are going to be available to me. It just feels like too much of an effort and possibly an expense to even deal with it until they sort it out.
Right. I wish I could come and live with Darian for a week, because whatever they put in the food to make him so optimistic is just joyous, and I think we should all have a bit of this, because I feel Copilot is becoming a bit of a trigger word for me grinding my teeth. It's a bit like saying Frau Blucher and I hear horses. Anyway, because I just can't see where Microsoft is going at the moment. Darian says it's nice to see them trying nice things. I just see them just flailing around at the moment, and this might sound utterly naive from my perspective, because I understand the principles of AI, and I use AI from time to time, but in a selling this to our customers sort of way, I think they're absolutely lost. Because last week I completed my Copilot Plus PC commercial accreditation, which basically tells me the official Microsoft way to shill this to the public. Now, I wrote about the consumer version a few months ago in the magazine, and not wanting to spoil on my own future article too much, this is as bad. So I spent nearly 3 hours of mind-numbing thought experiments. They're still headlining with recall. You know, a feature that hasn't yet launched and has worse reviews than the Titanic. You know, and in the hundreds of slides that I saw, there's nothing concrete at all. There's no tangible examples, even on a basic level of saying, let's throw Copilot at 10 Excel files and it can do this, it could do that. It's all just vapid, AI-generated, duplicated, just nonsense at the moment of what they're trying to sort of sell out. I don't know what their messaging is. I mean, on a retail level, my customers absolutely couldn't give a monkeys about Copilot, apart from how do I turn Copilot off? Because every time I click in it, this thing comes up. It's really early days, and I'm sure, give it 5 years, I may have had a Damascus sort of road to Damascus sort of change of mind. But just one final interesting rant. Somehow I signed up for LinkedIn Premium for a year. Don't ask. It's just a long story.
They got you at last.
Yeah. But a benefit of this is that I get a year's free premium AI access to Perplexity. So Microsoft is bunging me a year of a competitor's product. I've no idea what they're frankly arsing about at, and I left a gap in case you need to beat that, Darian. I'm sorry. Because it's all the training material I get, and bear in mind I'm a tiny little business, so I don't get half the stuff that Currys or Amazon or anything like that goes. The stuff that I'm getting is just AI, sell it to your customers, and there's nothing to sell to home users, to 99% of home users. Your PC Pro people listening to this, they'll go, well, I use it for this. You're not normal customers. You're PC Pro readers. You know what you're doing with the computer. For most people that will still have this rammed down their throat because they're going to have a new key on their next laptop, they haven't got a clue what they're doing with it and why they want it. And Microsoft has got to change that. And I think Barry hit the nail on the head earlier. They're clearly not getting enough customers for this.
Well, I think we can put Lee down as a maybe and move along before his
everyone.
blood pressure spikes out of all control. Lee, we're coming to you for a nib. Yes.
Oh, right. Acer has launched the Ultra Speed Nitro displays, which have refresh rates of up to 600 hertz, which is absolutely bonkers. Be still my beating heart. Now, Acer.
So just to be clear, that means 600 frames per second, right?
Yeah, this is up to. So obviously, it depends what your GPU can do and what software is modeling. But if you're seriously into your games, this might save you half a quarter of a milliframe at some point, meaning something to someone possibly. Anyway, this is serious progress from where we are. Because what we normally 144 is sort of pretty standard at the moment. Anyway, Acer claimed that this, on the good stuff. So Acer claimed that this rapid response gives you a rapid response time of up to 0.1 milliseconds. And that's really the story. But what's really interesting about these new range of laptops, we haven't got time to do it because it's nibs, is that they've got a built-in WebOS with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So it can do all sorts of whizzy things without the PC, like streaming movies and stuff like that. But as I say, this is nibs, so we can't talk about that.
I think this is about audiophile gear as well, and I'm increasingly thinking about gaming monitors. They should not be allowed to charge money for this stuff unless they can prove in double-blind tests that it actually makes a difference.
I'm just going to say, I think it was a 400 hertz monitor launched at CES last year, and it is pretty staggering to watch that. When you're doing it in games, it's moving across so quickly without any stutter. But the graphics card you would need to support 600 frames per second, my God, it's going to melt the earth. Right, Nibs, where are we? Darian, next for you.
Yeah, the Internet Archive, I think they run the Wayback Machine that we all know, but they also have been running a rather interesting thing called the Open Library, which is a service where I couldn't believe this was right when I first heard it. They own books, they scan in the books, and then they allow anybody on the internet to access the scanned copy of the book as long as no one is actually reading the physical copy at the same time. It's basically like a digital library service, and it appears to have been somewhat legal for most of the time it was running. However, when the pandemic hit, lots of companies started doing things to make life a bit more bearable and convenient and so on. Video conferencing services took the time limits off their offerings and stuff like that. The Internet Archive took away the number of people limit on the Open Library. So as I understand it, you could have 2 or 5 or 20,000 people all reading Winnie the Pooh simultaneously for free. I don't know why they ever imagined this would be legal. Perhaps they thought just they'd be allowed to get away with it because they were doing it with the best of intentions, but they certainly were not allowed to get away with it. And they've now, a court decision has come through this week confirming that it was a complete violation of copyright. And I'm not really sure what this is going to mean for the future of digital lending services in general, really. It would have been better to not let the courts get involved in the first place.
Yeah, I think I'm no lawyer, but it was specifically on that usage, not on digital lending in general. So I don't think it's got any massively wider implications, but we'll see. Final nib this week is Canva. This is the sort of company that allows you to create all kinds of lovely, whizzy social media stuff. They are putting their prices up quite spectacularly in the US. Some of their products are going up from, so the basic subscription in the US was $120 per year minus a penny. They will be going up to £300 per year for the first 12 months, and then $500 per year thereafter. So from 120 to 300, then 500 the year after. A pretty staggering price rise. This in no way, of course, has anything to do with Canva preparing for an IPO in the US. And maybe trying to raise some money. But the reason I sort of wanted this on the agenda was that don't forget that Canva bought Serif's Affinity products earlier this year, which have long been the sort of very cheap, one-off only licensed products that rival Adobe's Creative Suite. And I just hope this isn't an indication that that particularly valuable or nice piece of software is going to go down that same path of very expensive subscriptions, because it's excellent software.
It's the way things are going, though. Don't get me started on what's happened to my Pret a Manger subscription.
It's also with Canva. They've got a lot of reliance on AI now. So, who hasn't? And, that needs paying for. Evernote's the same at the moment. Evernote are releasing a whole new load of features.
Evernote? Is Evernote still alive? I've not heard of Evernote for 10
Don't get
years.
started. We can finish the podcast on Evernote. But yeah, there's a load of new AI features and subscriptions gone through the roof. So obviously the AI is bumping the prices.
Cripes. Well, one thing that remains steadfastly at the same price every month, he says, hoping future on about to put the price up, is your lovely magazine PC Pro. Now, if you're watching live on video, and you can actually see my camera this week, what you're seeing here is the subscriber cover that only goes out to subscribers. So if you're looking for this on the newsstand, you need to look for the entirely different cover. It's talking about Windows and Mac features, I believe. We have a wonderful set of content in this month's magazine, not least Mr. Grant here's very good feature about David Bowie that got rather unceremoniously booted out of the last issue because we didn't have space. So it was meant to coincide with the 30th anniversary of PC Pro. But Lee, just explain a bit about what you're writing about.
Certainly will. Before I do that, I just want to very publicly thank Barry for coming up with the suggestion and Tim for allowing me to do it, because writing for PC Pro is a joy. Writing about David Bowie in PC Pro is just some sort of weird dream that doesn't come true, and it did. But anyway, this is a story of BowieNet. BowieNet was the first of what were called affinity ISPs, which launched in the late 90s. And the line I use in the article is, if you don't consider David Bowie to be an internet pioneer, then I hope to change your mind. Because what they did on that platform with the technology available was years, sometimes decades ahead of everyone else. And I won't do any spoilers of the article, but what I will say in a frankly blatant attempt to shill more copies of PC Pro out to a wider audience, if you know anyone that loves David Bowie, buy them a copy of this article, because BowieNet is rarely written about in Bowie articles. And I tell you the story about how it started and how it ends. And we hear from 5 people, 3 of which all worked with Bowie, one of them that pitched the idea to Bowie, 2 of them Bowie's band members, and I hear from super fans that interacted on this platform. So you hear the whole story, how it started, how it ended. It is just a great piece of technical innovation at the time, where you could sort of pin your ISP colours to your favourite star, who in David Bowie's case would actually come and interact with you. So, if you wanted to talk to Taylor Swift, today's generation, you don't frankly stand a chance. Back in the 90s, if you wanted to talk to David Bowie, you signed up to BowieNet, and there's a very good chance at some point you would be in a chat room with him, and he will sit there for hours and chat with you.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible what went on, and it's an excellent feature. So I strongly urge you to read it. Elsewhere in the magazine this month, we have the lead features about Windows and Mac. So Tim and I have been going through all the new features that are coming to the 24H2 update to Windows 11, which is due to drop in a month or so, I believe, and the new version of Mac OS, which I can never remember. Is it, where are we? Sequoia, is it? The one coming up?
Yeah, something like that.
But anyway, so there's a new. I promise the feature has more now down detail than what I'm giving you here, especially since I wrote it. That's rather shocking. But Don't ask me to remember facts. I barely remember children's names. Also, we've got, well, all the normal regular offices. There's a, since your feature, Darren, on how to turn a router into Wi-Fi extender. Did
Yeah,
you
that's
run
right.
on?
I went rummaging through the cupboard and dug out routers of all the major brands and poured through their firmware so you don't have to, and found out how each one can, or whether each one can be set up to be a Wi-Fi repeater. So if you've got spare hardware lying around the house, you may be able to use it to clear up those not spots.
You can. Okay, so plenty more in there. Make sure you go and get your copy, or even better, subscribe, which you can do at pcpro.co.uk. Someone on Discord was expressing incredulity that you could run out of space in the magazine and couldn't we add another piece of paper to it. We will run our seminar on magazine publishing shortly after this episode's finished, and we'll explain the finances of publishing magazines. In the meantime, we are going to Hot Hardware, and this week, Lee, it's with you.
It is. Right. Talk about niche. Here we go. This is the Icybox docking station, the IB-180 MC-C31. That's all, frankly, you need. Yeah, absolutely. It's a perennial, isn't it? I'll hold the box up for those nice people on YouTube. I mean, they can't all be nice, but there you go. What this is, basically, it's... I'll show you the version out the box. It is a aluminium SSD docking station. Basically, it allows you to... SSDs, M2 SSDs, to connect to a PC, MacBook, Chromebook, phone, or tablet via USB. It is your USB caddy, but for M2 drives. Oh, so why would you use it? I use this one particularly for drive cloning. So if you've got a laptop, you know, an early SSD laptop with 128 gig SSD, excuse me, and you're running out of space, this device can be used for your cloning. You can also use it as a backup drive. You know, fit your own storage, swap it out, put something else in. It's a, you know, that sort of device. You can also boot from it. So if you want to play about with another OS or something like that, you can boot from that, and it'll whiz along at a very jolly nice speed, and enable you to do that sort of thing if that floats your boat. Specs, as you can see, or not see if you're not watching on YouTube. Why aren't you watching on YouTube? You should be watching on YouTube. It's a little dinky box, 108mm by 41 by 19, just off the top of my head. The USB-C whips along at about 10 gigabits per second, so not the highest speeds in the world, but certainly more than usable. I'm just going to, live here, live on YouTube, I'm just going to pop a drive in, which I can't see, so I can't do it over there. I'm going to have to bring it close to my face. I'm very old, you know. There you go. So I'll pop a drive in. So it sits like that. And if your drive is getting a bit hot, it comes with a aluminium heat shield, which you can pot in there, and there's thermal pads and everything that will stick that to it. So it'll keep those, even those really sort of toasty drives, really quite cool, which is all very nice. It accepts 3 types of SSD, three sizes of SSD, 42, 6s and 80s. And if you're wondering what the chuff I'm talking about, that is basically your size of SSD. So your 42 is 42mm, your 80 is 80mm long. You know, sensible names, Intel, sensible names that mean something, Intel, not waffle. It accepts, and this is the clever bit, it accepts NVMe and SATA SSDs. So going back to the cloning example, there is a sizable numbers of machines out there which were factory shipped with SATA M2s. So they look sort of the same, but they're much slower. They're basically a SATA hard drive in a different cloning, in a different box. And a lot of these machines, if you look at the motherboards, because there was a slightly more expensive model up the road, they've also got an NVMe slot. So on a lot of machines, you can jump the bus, as I call it, going from SATA to NVMe. And this device will handle both drives beautifully. It's again, a bit of a niche case, but it does it. Why do I like it? Why do I like this one particularly? Firstly, it's got an on-off button. And that sounds like a really ridiculous thing to say. But a lot of these things are not, and you plug it in and off it goes, and, you know, before you know it, you've plugged it in and your machine started to boot from it, and you don't want it to boot for it, and then it corrupts this, and then it asks for the BitLocker. So an on-off button is just a really good thing. The really, really cool thing about this, and I will pop this drive back in so I can show you, is a lot of these drives use, to secure the drive, they use a screw. I know, I've no problem with screws, but this has a little rubber. You can just see it there. It's a little rubber thing there. So it is literally, you just pop the drive in and out. It is super easy to get that in and out. And it's a stupid little thing, but if you're using this for I know a lot of people have a stack of drives and they put them in a caddy and stuff like that. If you want to do this with M2s, because you normally have to get a screwdriver out, it's a lot more time consuming. This is just super duper easy. It'll do M key and BNM key, so that's most of your modern SATA M2 drives sorted. The cable it comes with is USB-C, but it's also got a USB-A tip on it, so frankly all bases are covered. There are some review sites out there which say it will only take up to PCIe 2, but no, that's not true at all. It runs on PCIe 4 with no issues. I haven't tried it with PCIe 5 because, frankly, I haven't got one. I've never seen one in the wild. Oh, I better tell you how much it is, really, hadn't I? It is the stonking price of, or it's about 40 quid. So not the cheapest thing in the world, but if you like this sort of thing, then it is certainly worth a bit of a look. And frankly, because it is just a USB dock, I don't have too much more to say about it, apart from the fact that it is aluminium, so it is robust. Any questions, gentlemen?
You and the manufacturer use the word dock, but am I right in saying it's really just an enclosure? It doesn't have any other...
I wouldn't call it an enclosure because it doesn't enclose. There's no lid.
Really? Well,
no.
but there's a heatsink that goes.
There is a
on top,
heat sink,
isn't
but
there,
you don't have to use it. I don't use a heat sink at all. I sit there and blow on it just to keep them cool.
But it doesn't have any other functions other than connecting the drive to the computer.
No, that is, basically, it is an M2 to USB interface, if you want to put it that way. You would call it an enclosure if it had a lid, Darian. I am splitting hairs with you, but it does not have a lid. It is designed for super quick access. So yeah, so you are on the right lines. You are in the same you're on the same shelf in the store, but it is not. It doesn't have a lid. If you're looking for one with a roof, this isn't the one.
Does it require a power supply, Lee, or does it get all its power from the USB?
No, because it's M2. It takes everything from the USB.
Smashing.
Yeah, so it is. They are really sort of very convenient, and with a lot of people, a lot of the jobs I'm doing at the moment is taking, as I said at the start, taking old SSD laptops that were giving us 64 gig SSD or 128 gig SSD, and then throwing them. Now the prices have come down, is upgrading them. So people are using devices like these for external hard drives or something like that, because you can have a quick external hard drive for far cheaper than buying a boxed one, and also more options.
Okay, but would you, I mean, given the heatsink issues and whatever, is that really practical? You'd be happy with that sitting just on your desktop?
No problem at all in any shape or form. I have customers that have, whereas some customers, some users might have a profile for a different user. They have an entire drive, so they're constantly swapping drives in and out during a day to boot the machine into to a completely different drive. We were talking about earlier about John and his YubiKeys for different clients. I have people that work to keep their client work apart. It's all on different drives. So these sorts of machines are perfect for that. And I've never, apart from faulty SSDs, I've never really come across one that was so hot that it really did need sort of that. And for example, this A-data drive that I've been waving around in front of your nose has actually got a heat shield on it, and a lot of your super duper I keep using super duper quick SSDs do have a heat shield on it anyway, so the Icybox one doesn't fit on. I think it's more of a bit of a gimmick and just a sort of an all-in together, but I wouldn't worry about this thing burning your house down.
Okay,
that's
all
it.
right.
If it burns your house down, don't come and blame me.
That is Lee Grant of Inspiration Computers Huddersfield. So, if you are joining us live on Discord, the poll is live now. It's actually working this week. We are absolutely flying with the technology front. So, in the studio, I'm going to start with you, Darren, since you're pretty much the only choice.
I have had experience in the past of buying a cheapy M2 NVMe USB adapter and finding that every drive I put in it immediately overheated and crashed. So I was initially quite excited about the idea of a properly branded thing with a big chunky heatsink that goes on top. Reliability is pretty non-negotiable when you're dealing with your own data. I don't really need I don't really need this particular thing there, because it seems to be designed for, as you say, for regular swapping as a handy tool to have in a workshop where you want to just pop your drive in, do what you got, do what you came to do, pull it out and go about your business. That's not really, I think, how 99% of people use M2 enclosures. I think, in these days where you can't upgrade the internal storage, I think most people are buying them so they can, to use as high speed external storage. And that's fair enough. And it doesn't really, reflect negatively on this particular, pardon me, on this particular enclosure. But so where does that leave me? I don't have a use for it, but I can see that you probably really do.
I'm going to have to time you out if you don't get to a conclusion in a minute.
All right, well, Lee's a cool guy, so I'm going to say it's hot.
Oh, you're very kind.
Well, having taken Lee and the lovely Mrs. Grant's recommendation on an enclosure myself this week, then I know what he's talking about. So I'm going to trust him. And Lo, I have no use for it either. I think it's hot. And Lee, obviously, I guess you're in the hot camp.
Absolutely, I concur with both of you. For most people listening to this, it has no use whatsoever. But if you are one of these people that does a bit of tinkering for friends or family, you like upgrading a Steam Deck from time to time, this thing is an invaluable piece of kit. So, and it's a good one. It's reliable. You can buy very cheap ones from certain online retailers, which will explode and the controller chips get hotter than the SSD. But Icybox are a good brand, very reliable. So heartily a hot.
One late question from Daz Moore. Can you have two and clone from one to the other?
Well, you can with software. There's no software. There's no ability to do it on the device. But yeah, no problem. You can plug two in and use something like Macrium or Clonezilla to flash between the two, which is sort of basically what I do most days.
Well, as if it needed any more warming up amongst the Discord crowd, it's won comfortably with 26 votes in favour and 5 against. So that's a rare win for Lee. And he was moaning before that he's right down the bottom of the table in the hot hardware winners, but I think he's pushed himself up into mid-table safety, especially after last week's disaster for me. So that is a very much a hot. Remind me again of the name, Lee. Icybox.
It is the Icybox IB-180 MC-C31. I have put a link in Discord.
Yeah, I think I saw Taylor Swift recommending it last week as well. So that's smashing. We will be back next week and every Thursday. In the meantime, go and buy that PC magazine we plugged brilliantly a few moments ago. And we'll see you then. Goodbye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Take your time, Lee. Take your time.
Okay. All right.
All right.
So that was Michael Deer's fault.
Obviously distracting you.
He put, isn't Lee the holder of all the stats? And I sat there and thought, am I? And that's what delayed the whole thing. So
well, only because you're the one who's been through and worked them all out. I mean, it's not like you were handed a dossier on your first day.
This is true. It's just one of those things that just has grown and now I can't control it.
Yeah.
We surely can get AI to do it these days, Lee. I think we could probably make you redundant now. No offense. Just on the magazine publishing 101, I promised earlier, if we were to just decide to up the amount of pages to accommodate Lee's wonderful 3 or 4 page feature, we would have to add 8 pages. And that costs money, because paper is very expensive these days, not to mention printing. And that would involve Tim having to go and speak to somebody high up in future publishing and convince them that Lee's brilliant Bowie feature is going to sell enough copies to make up for all the extra pages we're going to print. And that conversation, as much as Lee's feature is utterly brilliant, wouldn't go well. So we have to punt it off to the next available space.
We'd also have to find 7 more pages of content, unless you just want 7 house ads or something. So.
Crossword.
Yeah.
The colouring in section finally gets used at last. But yes, so there we go. That's your little insight into magazine publishing. And you don't get this kind of stuff for free. So we now have to go and disappear and earn our corn. But thank you very much for joining us live, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers all.
Goodbye.
Bye. Bye.